Hi everybody, it's Lana from Sage and Sound here today in our waiting room to show you something that we've got in our waiting room, which is a set of cards called Optimism Boosters. Now, Optimism Boosters is a set of 30 cards designed by a clinical psychologist who looked at the research and found that there's 3 separate parts to optimistic people or an optimistic approach to a situation. And they are being able to be focused on the future, so having a clear idea of the goal that you have in mind, being aware of the stories that you're telling yourself about your ability to reach that goal, which can either be positive or negative. Obviously, if you're optimistic, your stories are going to be things like, I have the ability to reach this goal. Whereas if you're someone who is more negative, you might be more focused on the reasons why you can't get to that goal. And people who are more pessimistic often don't look into the future. So a pessimist is somebody who expects that things aren't going to turn out well for them. So they often avoid thinking about the future because why would you bother? You expect bad stuff is coming. So optimists, they set goals for the future. They have helpful stories that they tell themselves about their abilities to reach the goal. And then they also have, or they seek out, practical strategies that are going to help them get to their goal. So it's not just wishful or positive thinking, it's backed up with actions that actually make them likely to reach their goal. So these little optimism booster cards have questions on them that you can ask yourself to generate an optimistic mindset about the thing that you're trying to create, which I just think is an awesome idea. And that's why they're in our waiting room. So today what I want to show you is that's the actual cards themselves. They're upside down, they'll be backwards anyway. And I'm just going to read you out a sample question. So if you've got a goal in mind, or if you haven't, pause now and have a think about something you'd like to create in the future. And then we're going to go through one of the questions from each of the set of cards at random. So pause now or get your goal in mind. And I'm just going to randomly pick a card here. And this is from the goal, so the first part of the optimism. And it says, how can I go for a smaller goal? So this is tapping into the idea that often when we get overwhelmed and can't take action towards our goals, it's because we haven't broken the steps down into manageable chunks. So with your big goal in mind, now have a bit of a think, how can I go for a smaller goal? Have a go at breaking your goal down into smaller pieces. So second part, that's looking at our mindset and what we're telling ourselves about the situation. So another random card out of that one. So there's 10 of each color that I could be choosing from. And so looking at stories is called possibilities. How else could I look at this? What might I be overlooking? So this is asking you to look at what are the resources you have, as well as how else could I look at this? And I think a great way to answer that question, because it can be hard to get out of our own heads, is to have a think about what would a friend or trusted family member tell me about this? How would they look at that situation? What would they tell me about what I could achieve here? So have a think about that. Pause if you need to write down your answers. And then we're on to the third part, which is the strategies, the practical action part. So just got to find the right color. That is purple. And the card I've chosen at random is, if my worst case scenario happens, what will I do? And this is a great question. I love using this with clients in sessions. It can sound negative on the surface because you're focusing on the worst case, but the reason that we do it is that if you figure out what you'll actually do if that worst case scenario happens, you can stop being so afraid. It answers your what if kind of thinking. What if I fail? Well, then I'll go back to my regular job and make some more money and then try again. And once you realize that you've got an answer to whatever your worst case scenario is, you realize that you'd survive it. And that takes so much out of the fear out of trying to reach a goal in the first place. So that's a really powerful question, that one. So that's how these optimism booster cards work. You've got those 3 areas figuring out what your goal is, looking at how you think about the goal, and then making sure you've got enough practical strategies in place to help you reach your goal. So I hope that little exercise helped you with your goal. All the cards are in our waiting room, so if you're a current client, you can come in and work through this exercise by yourself while you're waiting for your appointment. Otherwise, you can purchase them online, I'm sure. They're called Optimism Boosters by Selena Byrne. All right, guys, go forward and reach those goals. See ya.